They called him the Wolf of Valdrin, the king who burned villages and broke armies with his bare hands. The monster mothers whispered about to keep their children from wandering too far into the dark. Ravel had heard the stories her whole life. Now she was standing in his courtyard, wrists bound in iron, dressed in rags, offered up like a lamb to a wolf. Her sisters had done this. Emira and Lisanne, with their soft smiles and sharp calculations, had wrapped her in chains and called it a peace offering. A gift, they said, to end the war between Grey Mist and Valdrin, a servant for the Alpha King. What they meant was a sacrifice. The courtyard was filled with wolves, hundreds of them flanking their king, watching in hungry silence as Ravel was dragged forward. She kept her chin lifted. She would not give them her fear. Then he appeared. Alpha King Corveth descended the fortress steps like a storm-given form, taller than any man she had ever seen. Dark hair fell across his scarred face, and his eyes, silver gray, the color of winter moons, swept over her with cold assessment. Ravel stopped breathing. He walked closer. The guards stepped aside. The crowd went silent. And then he froze. His nostrils flared. His entire body went rigid, like a man who had just been struck by lightning. Those silver eyes locked onto hers, and something in them shifted, cracked open, burned. One word fell from his lips. Quiet, absolute, irreversible. Mate. The courtyard erupted. But Ravel heard none of it. Because the most feared Alpha King in the realm was staring at her like she was the answer to a question he had stopped asking long ago. 3 days ago, Ravel had believed her sisters loved her. She had believed it when Emira brushed her hair before bed, humming softly. She had believed it when Lisanne slipped extra bread onto her plate during the lean winter months. She had believed it even when their father died and left all 3 of them orphans in a pack that had already forgotten their names. She did not believe it anymore. The wagon had rattled for 2 days through frozen mud and barren fields. They had given her no food, no water, and no explanation beyond Emira's final words at the border. "It's for the good of the pack," her eldest sister had said, not quite meeting her eyes. "You understand, don't you, Ravel? Someone had to go, and you've always been the least useful of us." The least useful. Ravel had stopped crying somewhere around the first nightfall. By the second, she had stopped feeling anything at all. Now she stood in the courtyard of Ironholt Keep, the seat of Valdrin power, and she understood exactly what she was. Not a peace offering, not a diplomatic gesture, a message. Grey Mist was so desperate, so broken, that they would send their own daughter to the enemy rather than fight. The guards shoved her forward, and Ravel stumbled but did not fall. She would not fall. She had made that decision somewhere between the border and this frozen hell. Whatever happened next, whatever this king did to her, she would meet it standing. The crowd pressed in around her. Wolves in human skin, all of them watching with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. She heard whispers. "That's the gift? From Grey Mist? She looks half-starved. The Alpha will kill her before sundown." Ravel's jaw tightened. Let them whisper. Let them watch. Then the crowd shifted, and she saw him. Alpha King Corveth. He moved down the steps of the keep with the kind of deliberate grace that belonged to predators. His shoulders were impossibly broad, his frame carved from years of warfare, and his face, scarred along the jaw and through one dark eyebrow, held no softness whatsoever. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart, silver gray and cold. The eyes of a man who had seen too much death to be moved by anything at all. He stopped 10 paces away. His gaze swept over her, assessing, dismissing, and then his entire body went still. Ravel felt it before she understood it, a pull in her chest, a thread she hadn't known existed suddenly pulled taut. Her wolf, dormant for so long, stirred inside her and pressed against her ribs like it was trying to reach him. No, that was impossible. But Corveth's expression had changed. The cold assessment was gone. In its place was something raw, something that looked almost like pain. He stepped forward. The crowd drew back. Ravel's breath caught. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the flecks of ice in his silver eyes, close enough that his scent, pine and wood smoke, and something darker, wrapped around her like a physical thing. "Who sent you?" His voice was low, rough, scraped from somewhere deep. Ravel lifted her chin. "My sisters." Something flickered across his face. "And they knew? What you are?" "What I am." Ravel's voice came out steady despite her pounding heart. "I am a servant, a peace offering. That is what they called me." Corveth's jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind together. Then he reached for her wrists, and every guard in the courtyard stiffened. But the king was not reaching for a weapon. He was reaching for her chains. His hands, scarred and enormous, closed around the iron cuffs. He twisted once, and the metal shattered like it was made of dry twigs. The chains fell to the frozen ground. Ravel stared at her freed wrists, then up at him. "I don't understand." "No," Corveth said, his voice barely above a breath. "I don't suppose you do." He turned to the crowd, and when he spoke again, his voice carried across the courtyard like rolling thunder. "This woman is not a servant. She is not a gift. She is my fated mate, and anyone who touches her will answer to me personally." The silence that followed was absolute. Ravel's knees nearly buckled. Mate. The word echoed inside her skull. Fated mate. The bond that every wolf dreamed of and most never found. The connection that could not be faked, could not be forced, could not be broken. And she had been sold into it like cattle at market. She looked at Corveth, at this man who was supposed to be her enemy, her captor, her doom. He was watching her with an expression she could not read. "Come," he said quietly. "We have much to discuss." He turned and walked toward the keep. Behind her, Ravel heard the crowd erupt into frantic whispers. But she was no longer listening. Her sisters had sold her to the enemy. They had no idea what they had truly given away. In 32 years of life, Corveth had never once lost control of his own body. He had fought in 17 battles, killed more men than he could count, and built Valdren into the most powerful pack in the Northern Territories through nothing but will and blood and the kind of discipline that broke lesser wolves. And now his hands were shaking. He walked through the corridors of Ironholt with Ravel 2 steps behind him, her bare feet silent on the stone. He could hear her heartbeat. He could smell her, even beneath the dirt and exhaustion, something like rain on spring earth. Something that made his wolf howl and claw at the inside of his chest. Mate, mate, mate. The word pounded through him with every step. He had stopped believing in fated mates years ago. When he was young, his mother had told him stories. "One day," she said, "you will find her. The one who was made for you. The one who will make everything make sense." But his mother had died when he was 12, and his father had been killed 2 years later, and Corveth had learned very quickly that the world did not deal in fairy tales. He had taken lovers. He had considered political marriages. He had resigned himself to a life of alliances and heirs bred for strategy rather than sentiment. And then the Grey Mist delegation had shoved a half-starved woman into his courtyard, and everything he thought he knew had shattered like the chains he had torn from her wrists. He stopped at the door to his private chambers and turned. Ravel looked up at him. She was trying to hide her fear, he could see that. Chin lifted, shoulders back, eyes steady. But her pulse was racing, and her scent carried the sharp edge of adrenaline. She was terrified. Of him. Something in Corveth's chest twisted painfully. "You're safe here," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. "No one will harm you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "With respect, Your Majesty, I've been told many things by people who claim to mean well. Their words and their actions rarely matched." She had spine. Even now, exhausted and alone in enemy territory, she was not cowering. She was studying him, assessing him, the way a soldier assessed terrain before battle. Corveth found himself almost smiling. Almost. Your sisters, he said. They did not tell you why they were sending you here. They said I was a gift, a gesture of goodwill. Her voice was flat. They said someone had to go, and I was the most expendable. Expendable. The word tasted like poison. You are a true-blooded wolf of Grey Mist, daughter of their former beta, if I'm not mistaken. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, then wariness. You know who my father was? I make it my business to know my enemies. He paused. Your father was an honorable man. We fought against each other twice. He nearly killed me once. Revell blinked. He never mentioned that. He wouldn't have. It was the kind of fight that earns respect, not boasting. Corveth studied her face, finding her father's stubborn jaw, her father's unflinching gaze. He died 3 winters ago. Yes. And your mother? When I was 6. No emotion in her voice, but her scent shifted. Old grief, buried deep. Corveth nodded slowly. So you were alone, with sisters who saw you as a burden. They are my family, Revell said, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Family does not sell family to their enemies. Corveth stepped closer, watching her carefully for signs of retreat. She did not move. Whatever they told you, whatever they told themselves, what they did was betrayal. You understand that. Her throat worked as she swallowed. It doesn't matter what I understand. I'm here now. Yes, Corveth said quietly. You are. The silence stretched between them. Corveth's wolf was pacing inside him, desperate to reach her, to touch her, to make sure she was real. He kept it locked down through sheer will. The mate bond, Revell said finally. I've heard stories, but I never felt it before today. Neither did I. He watched her absorb that. The bond is rare. Most wolves never experience it. Those who do often spend years searching. And here you are, delivered to my doorstep in chains by people who had no idea what they held. What does this mean? Her voice was barely above a whisper. For me. For you. For the war. Corveth considered his answer carefully. It means everything has changed. A fated bond cannot be ignored. It cannot be broken. If I reject you, my wolf will never recover. If you reject me, yours will suffer the same. So we're trapped. Perhaps. He held her gaze. Or perhaps we have been given something neither of us expected. The choice of what to do with it is still ours. Revell's expression shifted just slightly. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. Curiosity. A flicker of something that might, with time, become something warmer. A knock at the door made them both turn. Sorven, Corveth's second in command, entered with a grim expression. Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty, but you should know, Lady Ithara has requested an audience. Corveth's jaw tightened. Revell looked between them. Who is Lady Ithara? Sorven's eyes flicked to the king, uncertain. Corveth exhaled slowly. She is the woman who was supposed to become my Luna. Before today. The words hung in the air like smoke before a fire. And somewhere in the keep, Corveth knew, a very dangerous woman was already planning what to do about the girl who had just stolen her future. The chambers they gave her were larger than the entire house she had shared with her sisters in Grey Mist. Revell stood in the center of the room, afraid to touch anything. The bed was draped in furs so thick and soft they looked like clouds made solid. A fire crackled in a stone hearth large enough for her to stand inside. Tapestries covered the walls, depicting wolves hunting through silver forests, and the windows overlooked a courtyard where guards trained in precise, brutal formations. This was not a servant's room. This was a room for someone who mattered. Revell did not know how to be someone who mattered. A knock at the door made her flinch. She turned as a woman entered, older than Revell by perhaps a decade, with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical braid. I'm Brennus, the woman said, setting down a tray laden with food and a steaming pitcher. The king asked me to see to your needs. My needs, Revell repeated. The words felt strange in her mouth. A bath is being prepared. Clean clothes have been sent for. And you look like you haven't eaten properly in weeks. So I brought enough food for 3 people. Brennus studied her with frank assessment. Though I suspect you could use every bite. Ravel's stomach cramped at the sight of the food. Fresh bread, sliced meat, cheese and fruit, and something that smelled like spiced honey. I don't understand, she said. Why am I being treated like this? I was supposed to be a servant. Brennus's expression softened. You're his mate, child. Whatever you were before, you're not that anymore. The king's fated mate is the most protected person in all of Valdrin. He doesn't know me, Ravel said. I'm his enemy. The bond doesn't care about politics. Brennus poured something steaming into a cup and pressed it into Ravella's hands. Drink. It's just tea with honey. You need warmth inside you. Ravel wrapped her fingers around the cup. The heat seeped into her frozen hands, and she felt something in her chest loosen, just slightly. Thank you, she whispered. Brennus nodded. The king is not what the stories say, child. I've served this house for 20 years. I've seen what he was before the crown, and what the crown has made of him. There is more to Corveth than blood and war. Then why does everyone fear him? Because fear is useful. It keeps enemies at bay. It keeps his people safe. Brennus moved toward the door, then paused. But fear is also lonely. Remember that. She left, and Ravel stood alone with her tea and her confusion and the strange warmth blooming in her chest. She ate. She bathed. She dressed in clothes softer than anything she had ever worn, a simple gray dress that fit her perfectly, as if someone had known her measurements before she arrived. She was sitting by the fire, trying to process the impossible turn her life had taken, when the door opened without a knock. The woman who entered was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Tall, raven-haired, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of burnt amber. She wore a gown of deep crimson that hugged her figure, and she moved with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no. Ravel stood immediately, instinct screaming at her to be ready. So. The woman's voice was silk wrapped around steel. You're the Grey Mist girl. I am Ravel. I know who you are. The woman circled her slowly, the way a wolf circled wounded prey. I am Lady Ithara. Until this morning, I was to be the king's Luna, his chosen queen, his political partner and the mother of his heirs. Ravel kept her voice steady. I did not ask for this. No, you didn't. Ithara stopped in front of her, close enough that Ravel could smell her perfume, jasmine, and something sharper beneath. You were dragged here in chains like an animal, and yet somehow, the king looks at you like you hung the moon. The bond, Ravel said carefully, was not my choice. No, it wasn't. Ithara smiled, and the warmth did not reach her eyes. But choices can be made now, can't they? You could reject him. The bond would weaken. He would recover, eventually, and I would be there to help him through it. I don't want to hurt him. How noble. Ithara's smile sharpened. But you will hurt him, little wolf, simply by existing. You are an enemy's daughter, a political disaster, a walking reminder that the mate he found was sent to him in chains as an insult. Every day you stay here, you weaken his position. The king didn't seem to think so. The king is blinded by the bond. He cannot see clearly when he looks at you, but I see you perfectly. Ithara leaned closer, and her voice dropped to something soft and dangerous. I see a scared little girl who doesn't belong here, who will never belong here, and I will be watching every single thing you do. She stepped back, that sharp smile still fixed in place. Welcome to Valdrin, Ravel of Grey Mist. I do hope you survive it. She swept out of the room like a crimson storm, leaving silence in her wake. Ravel stood very still, her heart pounding, her hands clenched at her sides. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. And somewhere deep inside her chest, her wolf stirred, not with fear, but with something fiercer. something that felt like the first spark of a fire that would not be easily extinguished. She would not let this woman break her. She had survived her sisters. She had survived the journey. She had survived the chains and the cold and the cruelty of everyone who had ever looked at her and seen nothing worth keeping. If Lady Ithara wanted a war, Revell would give her one. She just had to figure out how to fight it. 1 week passed, and Revell learned that Ironholt Keep was not what she had expected. She had expected cold stone and colder hearts. She had expected cruelty disguised as indifference. She had expected to be forgotten in her chambers, ignored until the king decided what to do with his unwanted mate. Instead, she found something far more confusing. Brennus came every morning with fresh food and warmer clothes. Guards nodded to her in the hallways, not with hostility, but with something approaching respect. Servants asked if she needed anything, and when she said no, they looked genuinely disappointed that they could not help. And Corveth. Corveth was the most confusing of all. He did not summon her. He did not demand her presence. But she saw him often, in places that seemed too coincidental to be chance. In the library when she went looking for books. In the courtyard when she took her first hesitant walk outside. In the great hall during meals, where he sat at the head of the table and watched her across the crowded room with those silver eyes that made her skin feel too tight. He was giving her space. She understood that much. He was waiting for her to come to him. On the 7th day, she did. She found him in the war room, standing over a massive table covered in maps and markers. He was alone, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair falling loose across his forehead as he frowned at the terrain before him. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted. Softened. Revell. Her name in his voice still did strange things to her chest. You came. You've been circling me like a wolf with a trapped rabbit, she said. I thought I'd save you the trouble. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. That obvious? To someone who grew up watching wolves. Yes. He straightened, giving her his full attention. She tried not to notice how tall he was, how the firelight caught the silver in his eyes, how his scent reached her even from across the room. I wanted to give you time to adjust, he said. This has not been a gentle transition. No. Revell moved closer, stopping at the edge of the map table. It hasn't. She looked down at the markers, recognizing some of the territories. Grey Mist was there, marked in gray. Valdrin covered more than half the map, marked in black. Are you planning more conquests? She asked. Defense positions. Corveth traced a mountain range with one scarred finger. Grey Mist may have sent you as a peace offering, but I am not foolish enough to believe peace is what they want. My sisters sent me to get rid of me. I don't think they were thinking about war. Or peace. Your sisters, Corveth said slowly, are not the only ones making decisions in Grey Mist. Revell looked up at him. What do you mean? He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Your pack has new leadership since your father's death, Alpha Brennick and his inner circle. They have been pushing for escalation for years. The war was meant to weaken both sides enough for Brennick to consolidate power. And sending me here? Either a calculated insult or something more. His jaw tightened. I don't yet know which. Revell absorbed this, her mind racing. She had known her sisters were cold. She had not considered that they might be pawns in something larger. Why are you telling me this? She asked. I could be a spy. I could be here to report everything back to Grey Mist. Are you? No. The word came out fierce and immediate. They sold me. Whatever loyalty I had died in that wagon. Corveth studied her for a long moment, and she felt the weight of his assessment. He was deciding something. She could feel the moment hanging between them like a held breath. I believe you, he said finally. Something loosened in Revell's chest. She hadn't realized how badly she needed someone to believe her until that moment. The mate bond, she said, her voice quieter now. Does it influence you? Make you trust me when you shouldn't? It influences me, Corveth admitted. But not like that. The bond tells me you are mine, that I should protect you, that your pain is my pain. It does not tell me whether you are trustworthy, that I must decide for myself. And you've decided? He moved around the table closer until barely 2 feet separated them, his scent wrapped around her, pine and smoke and something that made her wolf press forward with desperate longing. I've decided, he said softly, that you are braver than anyone who has ever stood before me in this room. That you have been treated with cruelty by everyone who should have protected you. And that, if you give me the chance, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that alone again. Ravel's throat tightened. Her eyes burned. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her like she was something worth keeping. I don't know how to be what you need, she whispered. I don't know how to be a Luna. Then we learn together. He lifted his hand, hesitated, and then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was warm, careful, like she was something precious. I have never had a mate before. I suspect I will be terrible at it. A laugh escaped her, small and surprised. That makes 2 of us. His eyes warmed. That almost smile returned. Then we are perfectly matched in our incompetence. She smiled back, and for the first time since she had arrived in Valdren, it didn't feel forced. For the first time, it felt like maybe, possibly, impossibly, this could become something real. A month slipped by like water through cupped hands. Ravel barely noticed the days passing. Each one brought something new, something unexpected, something that slowly dismantled every belief she had carried with her from Grey Mist. Corveth began teaching her the layout of the keep, walking with her through corridors and courtyards, explaining the history of each stone. He introduced her to his council, old wolves with scarred faces and sharp minds who watched her with careful assessment but no hostility. He gave her a seat at the high table during meals, where she sat at his right hand and felt the weight of every stair in the great hall. She should have felt like an imposter. Instead, she began to feel like she belonged. Brennus noticed the change first. You're standing taller, she said one morning, adjusting the collar of Ravel's dress. And you've stopped flinching every time someone enters the room. Have I? You have? Brennus smiled. This place suits you, child. Or perhaps it's not the place that suits you, but the man. Ravel's cheeks warmed. We barely know each other. You know enough. Brennus's eyes were knowing. I've watched the king for 20 years. I've never seen him laugh before you came. He laughs? Once, 3 days ago, when you tripped over the hound in the courtyard and called it a very rude carpet. Ravel covered her face with her hands. He told you about that? He told everyone about that. In his own way. Brennus patted her shoulder. He's proud of you, Ravel. He just doesn't know how to show it except by mentioning you in every conversation he has. The warmth in Ravelli's chest spread deeper, settling into places that had been cold for a very long time. But not everything in Ironhold was warm. Ithara was still there. She attended every council meeting, every formal dinner, and every public event. She sat opposite Ravel at the high table and smiled with perfect politeness and eyes that promised slow ruin. She never said anything overtly hostile, never made accusations. But Ravel felt her watching, always watching, and cataloging every mistake, every stumble, every moment of uncertainty. And then there were the whispers. Ravel caught fragments in hallways and corners. Words like cursed and unstable and what happened before. She didn't understand the references, but she noticed how servants sometimes went quiet when Corveth passed. How his guards occasionally exchanged glances when he seemed distracted or tense. Something was wrong. Something no one was telling her. She was in the library late one evening when she heard it. Raised voices, muffled by stone walls but still audible. She followed the sound to a half-open door and stopped when she recognized the voices. Corveth and Ithara. You cannot ignore this forever. Ithara's voice was sharp. The council is beginning to talk. The episodes are getting worse, and you refuse to take any precautions. The episodes are under control. They are not, and you know it. A pause. How long until you lose control in front of her? How long until your precious mate sees what you really are? That is not your concern. It is absolutely my concern. I was supposed to be your Luna. I was supposed to help you manage this. Instead, you chose some half-starved enemy girl who knows nothing about what you carry. Ravel is my mate. That is not a choice. Everything is a choice, Corveth. You could reject the bond. You could let it fade. You could choose stability over sentiment. Silence. Heavy and long. Leave, Corveth said finally. His voice was cold. Before I forget that we were once allies. Footsteps approached the door, and Ravel pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. Ithara swept past without seeing her, crimson gown trailing like a blood stain on the stone. Ravel waited until the footsteps faded, then stepped into the doorway. Corveth stood by the window, his back to her, shoulders rigid. He didn't turn, but she knew he was aware of her presence. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough." She stepped closer. What episodes was she talking about? He didn't answer for a long moment. When he finally turned, his face was carved from stone. "There are things about me you don't know," he said. "Things I should have told you before this went any further." "Then tell me now." "Not here." He moved toward the door, passing close enough that she felt the tension radiating from his body. "Tomorrow, I will show you something. Then you can decide if you still want any part of this bond." He left without another word. Ravel stood alone in the library, her heart caught somewhere between her ribs, fear and determination warring inside her chest. Whatever secret Corveth was hiding, she would face it. She just hoped she was strong enough to survive what she found. He should have told her sooner. Corveth stood at the entrance to the lower keep, the part of Ironholt that no one spoke about. The corridors here were older, darker, carved from the mountain itself. The air smelled of damp stone and something metallic. Blood. Old blood. His blood, spilled in this place more times than he could count. Ravel appeared at the top of the stairs, and he watched her descend, her face pale but determined. She had not slept well. He could see it in the shadows beneath her eyes. Neither had he. "What is this place?" she asked when she reached him. "The containment chambers." He gestured for her to follow. "Built 200 years ago for wolves who lost control of their beasts, my great-grandfather commissioned them after he killed his own brother during a blood rage." Ravel's steps slowed. Blood rage? A hereditary curse. The word tasted like ash. "It runs in my bloodline. Not every generation, but enough. The wolf becomes dominant, uncontrollable. The man disappears, and only the beast remains." He stopped at a heavy iron door, scarred with claw marks on the inside. "I have it," he said quietly. "The rage. It comes without warning. One moment I am myself, and the next I am something else entirely. Something that destroys everything it touches." Ravel stared at the door, at the marks, at the reinforced locks designed to keep a monster contained. "How often?" she asked. "It varies. Sometimes months pass without incident, sometimes days." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "It is why I have fought so many wars. The violence helps. It gives the beast somewhere to go. Without it, the episodes come faster, stronger, harder to predict." Ithara said they were getting worse. She is right. The admission cost him more than he wanted to show. "Since the fighting stopped, since I brought you here, the episodes have increased. The beast wants something it cannot have, and it is tearing itself apart trying to reach it." "What does it want?" Corveth looked at her, and the truth scraped out of him like something being dragged across broken glass. "You." Ravel went very still. "The mate bond," he continued, "is driving it mad. The beast recognizes you. It wants to claim you, protect you, and keep you safe. But I have kept my distance, trying to give you time to choose. And the beast does not understand patience. It only understands possession. So the closer we get, the worse it becomes? No. The more I deny the bond, the worse it becomes. If I let myself fully accept it, if you accepted it, the beast would calm. The rage would ease. He paused. But I cannot ask you to bind yourself to a monster just to save me. Ravel was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Is there something else? She asked finally. Something you're still not telling me? Corveth closed his eyes. Of course she would sense it. The bond made lies almost impossible between mates. Even partial truths rang false. Your father, he said. Ravel stiffened. What about him? I told you we fought twice, that he nearly killed me once. Corveth opened his eyes and made himself face her. What I did not tell you is how he died. He died in the Battle of Ashenford, defending Greymist's southern border. He died in the Battle of Ashenford, Corveth agreed. But he was not defending Greymist. He was defending me. The color drained from Ravel's face. We had been enemies, Corveth continued, each word heavier than the last. But during our second encounter, something changed. He saw me go into a blood rage, and instead of killing me while I was vulnerable, he restrained me, talked me down. He was the first person outside my bloodline who had ever seen the beast and not run. I don't understand. We kept in contact after that. Secretly. He had discovered something. Documents that proved your pack's leadership had been manipulating both sides, prolonging the war for profit. He was going to bring the evidence to me. Corveth's voice cracked. The ambush at Ashenford was meant for me. Your father found out and rode through the night to warn me. He arrived just as the arrows fell. The memory burned behind his eyes. He threw himself in front of the volley, took 6 arrows meant for my chest. Ravel's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes glistened. He died in my arms, Corveth said. And the last thing he said was that I had to find his daughters, that I had to protect them because they would be in danger once Brennick realized what he knew. His daughters. Ravel's voice was barely a whisper. Me. And my sisters. I sent men to Greymist. They reported that all 3 daughters were alive and safe, under the protection of your pack. I assumed they were being cared for. His jaw tightened. I did not know they were planning to sell you. I did not know they were working with Brennick. My sisters knew. The realization broke across her face like a wave. They knew Papa died protecting you. And they sent me here anyway. Ravel? They knew. Her voice rose. They knew, and they sold me like I was nothing. Like everything Papa did meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she wasn't sobbing. She was shaking with something fiercer than grief. I am sorry, Corveth said. I should have told you sooner. I should have... Don't. Ravel held up one hand, and he stopped. Just give me a moment. She turned away from him, her shoulders trembling. He watched her struggle to breathe, to process, to hold herself together. Every instinct screamed at him to go to her, to wrap her in his arms and take the pain away. He stayed where he was. She had asked for a moment. He would give her that, even if it killed him. Finally, she turned back. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. My father gave his life for you. Yes. And my sisters knew. It appears so. Then I need to know everything. She stepped toward him, and despite everything, there was fire in her eyes. Every document, every piece of evidence, everything Papa discovered. If Brennick and my sisters think they've won, they are wrong. What are you saying? Ravel lifted her chin, and in that moment, she looked every inch a Luna. I'm saying that if I am your mate, then your enemies are my enemies, and my sisters just made themselves the enemy of the Alpha King of Valdrin. She held out her hand. Corveth looked at it, then at her face, at the fierce determination burning through the grief. He took her hand, and felt the bond between them lock into place like a key turning in an ancient lock. She had expected Corveth to argue, to caution patience. Instead, he had simply nodded and opened the doors to everything. The evidence was extensive. Documents proving Brennick had manipulated supply lines to both packs, prolonging the war for profit. Letters showing Amira and Lysane had traded information to Brennick's inner circle for years in exchange for power. And one final document, hidden in a sealed case that Corveth had kept locked away since her father's death. A letter from her father to her. Revell read it alone, fire burning low, Corveth waiting outside in case she needed him. My dearest Revell, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and the truth has found its way to you at last. I am sorry I could not protect you better. I am sorry I could not give you the life you deserved. But I need you to know that of all the things I accomplished in my life, you were the one I was most proud of. Your sisters have lost their way. The world has made them hard and hungry and blind to what matters. But you, my little wolf, you kept your heart soft even when softness cost you. That is not weakness. That is the greatest strength there is. Find someone who sees that strength. Find someone worthy of the heart you carry. And when you do, hold on to them with everything you have. I love you. I have always loved you. And I will be watching over you, wherever the moon takes me. She cried for hours. Corveth held her through all of it, saying nothing, just being there. That was the night she realized she loved him. Not because of the bond, but because he had shown her, day after day, what it meant to be truly seen. She had not told him yet. The words felt too large, too important to speak carelessly. But she would. Soon. If Ithara had not been watching. Revell should have expected it. The warning signs had been there for weeks. Ithara's smiles growing sharper, her presence growing more frequent. The way she lingered near Corveth, touching his arm, laughing at things he said, reminding everyone that she had known him longer. Revell had ignored it, too focused on building a case against Brennick and her sisters. She had forgotten that wounded predators were the most dangerous. It happened on the night of the winter solstice. Ironholt was celebrating. Music filled the great hall, and wolves danced beneath hanging lanterns while Corveth sat at the high table, looking almost relaxed. Revell stepped outside for air, overwhelmed by the noise and the crowds. She was standing on the eastern balcony, watching the moon rise, when she heard footsteps behind her. "Beautiful night," Ithara said. Revell turned. The other woman stood in the doorway, dressed in silver, her dark hair loose. She looked almost friendly. That was what made Revell's instincts scream. "It is," Revell said carefully. "Of course you need a moment away." Ithara moved closer. "It must be overwhelming. A month ago you were a servant in chains. Now you're supposed to be Luna. Life changes quickly." "It does." Ithara smiled. "And it can change again, just as fast." She moved before Revell could react. A blade appeared in Ithara's hand, and she lunged with the speed of a trained killer. Revell twisted, but not fast enough. The blade caught her arm, slicing through fabric and skin. Revell stumbled backward, hitting the balcony railing. Below her, the mountain dropped into darkness. "I gave you every chance to leave," Ithra said, advancing. "I told you what you were. An enemy. An outsider." "You're insane." "I'm practical." Ithra's eyes were cold. "Corveth needs a Luna who can manage his condition, not some half-feral refugee who looks at him like he's a hero. He's not broken. He is. The blood rage destroyed his father, his grandfather, and it will destroy him unless someone controls it." Ithara raised the blade. "I was supposed to be that someone. I spent 15 years preparing. Then you arrived, and he looked at you like none of it mattered." "Because it doesn't." Revella's voice was steady despite the blood on her arm. "The Bond chose me." "Then the Bond made a mistake." Ithra lunged again. This time, Revell was ready. She ducked, grabbed Ithra's wrist and twisted. The blade clattered to stone, but Ithra was faster. She broke free and drove her elbow into Revell's stomach, doubling her over. Then her hands closed around Revell's throat, pushing her against the railing. "No one will mourn you," Ithara hissed. "Your sisters sold you. Your pack forgot you. Corveth will recover." Ravel's vision was going dark. She clawed at Ithara's hands, but the grip was iron. This was it. This was how she died. And then a roar split the night. Ithara's hands vanished. Ravel collapsed against the railing, gasping. Something massive and black and terrifying stood between her and her attacker. Corveth, in full wolf form. Silver eyes burning with a rage that was not entirely human. Ithara scrambled backward. Corveth, wait! This isn't what it looks like. The wolf snarled. She attacked me first. Ithara's voice climbed toward panic. She's working with Brennick. I have proof. Lies. But the wolf wasn't listening to words. It lunged. Ithara screamed as the wolf caught her arm. Bones snapped. Corveth! Ravel's voice cracked. Corveth, stop! The wolf didn't stop. It shook Ithara like a doll. Corveth! Ravel pushed herself up and stumbled forward. She reached the wolf and put her hand against his massive head. Stop, she said softly. I'm here. I'm safe. You can stop. The wolf went rigid. For a terrible moment she thought it wouldn't work. Then the massive body shuddered. The jaws opened. Ithara fell to the ground, alive but broken. The wolf turned to Ravel, and those silver eyes were still wild. But beneath the rage, she saw fear. Fear that he had lost her. Fear that he had become the monster. I'm here, Ravel said again. I'm not going anywhere. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on. Slowly, the wolf lowered himself to the ground. Around them, guards arrived. Chaos erupted. But Ravel didn't move. She stayed exactly where she was, holding the beast who had saved her. She was not letting go. He remembered everything. That was the worst part. The blood rage usually stole his memories, but this time, he remembered all of it. Ithara's hands around Ravel's throat. The sound Ravel made when she couldn't breathe. The way his vision had gone red, and his body had simply moved. He remembered the taste of Ithara's blood. The way Ravel had looked at him when she put her hand on his head and told him to stop. Not with fear, with trust. He woke in his chambers 3 days later, weak and aching. Ravel was asleep in the chair beside his bed, her injured arm wrapped in bandages. She had stayed, through everything. His movement woke her. Her eyes opened, found his, and filled with tears. You're awake. I'm awake. His voice came out rough. You should be resting. So should you. She moved to sit on the edge of the bed. How do you feel? Like I fought a war alone and lost. He paused. Ithara? Alive. In the containment chambers. She'll face trial when you're recovered. I almost killed her. You stopped. Because of you. He looked at their joined hands. The beast has never stopped before. But you touched me, and it just stopped. The bond, Ravel said quietly. No. Corveth shook his head. Not just the bond. You. Something about you reaches the part of me that the beast can't touch. Her breath caught. I should have told you sooner. About all of it. I was afraid that if you knew what I really was, you would run. I'm not running. I know. He lifted her hand to his lips. I know. Silence fell between them, warm and heavy. My sisters, Ravel said finally. The evidence. What happens now? That depends on you. Corveth met her eyes. The case against Brennick is solid. When we present it to the Allied Pax, his leadership will collapse. Your sister's involvement will be exposed. Good. The word came out fierce. They sold me. They knew our father died protecting you. And they sold me anyway. They will answer for that. He paused. And after? When justice is served and the war is truly over? Ravel looked at him. What do you mean? You came here in chains, against your will. The mate bond connected us. But I never wanted you to feel trapped. He forced himself to say the words. If you want to leave after this is done, I will let you go. I will not hold you here. You would do that? Even though it would hurt you? Loving someone means wanting their happiness, even if that happiness isn't with you. He smiled, small and sad. I learned that from your father, the way he talked about you. Ravel was crying now. I don't want to leave, she said. Hope flared in his chest. You don't? No. She cupped his face in her hands. I spent my whole life being treated like I didn't matter. Then I came here, to the place that was supposed to be my prison, and I found someone who looks at me like I'm the answer to everything. You are. Then stop trying to give me an escape route. She leaned closer. I choose this. I choose you. Not because of the bond, because you're the first person who ever made me feel like I was worth choosing back. Corveth's hands covered hers. Ravel. I love you, she said. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. A laugh escaped him, broken and full of wonder. I love you too. Good. She smiled through her tears. Then stop talking and kiss me. He did. And for the first time in his life, the beast inside him was completely, utterly silent. 6 months later, Ravel stood on the balcony where Ithara had tried to kill her and watched the sun rise over a world that had completely changed. Brennick was gone. The evidence had been presented to the Allied Pax, and his fall had been swift. He was rotting in a prison cell, awaiting trial for war crimes. Her sisters had fled the night before the evidence went public. Corveth had offered to hunt them down, but Ravel refused. Let them run, she had said. Let them spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. That's punishment enough. Ithara had been banished, stripped of her rank, her lands, her name, and sent into exile in the frozen northern wastes. The peace treaty between Valdrin and Greymist had been signed 3 months ago. Trade routes were opening, families were reuniting. And Ravel was Luna. The ceremony had been held at the spring equinox under a full moon. Corveth had placed the silver circlet on her head with hands that trembled, and his voice had cracked when he spoke the vows. She had kissed him in front of the entire court, and no one had been surprised. Now she watched the sunrise and felt Corveth's arms wrap around her from behind. You're awake early, he murmured. Couldn't sleep. She leaned back against him. I was thinking about the day I arrived. How terrified I was. How certain I was that you were going to kill me. I was certain I was going to love you, Corveth said. From the moment I saw you. Romantic. I try. He kissed her forehead. What else were you thinking about? My father. Her voice softened. I think he would have liked this. Knowing his death led to peace instead of more war. He would be proud of you. Corveth pulled back to look at her. I am proud of you. For what? For surviving. For choosing to stay. For turning the worst thing that ever happened to you into something beautiful. His silver eyes were warm. You are the strongest person I have ever known, Ravel, and I will remind you of that every single day. She smiled, bright and free. That's a lot of pressure. I'm the Alpha King. I can handle pressure. Can you handle me? Absolutely not. He grinned, and the expression transformed his scarred face into something young and utterly hers. But I'm looking forward to trying. She laughed and pulled him down for a kiss. Below them, the keep was waking. Voices drifted from the courtyard. This was her life now. This was her home. And as Corveth deepened the kiss, Ravel thought about her sisters, about the chains they had wrapped around her wrists. They had meant to destroy her. Instead, they had delivered her to the only place she had ever truly belonged. She smiled against Corveth's lips and decided that was the best revenge of all.